Everybody, welcome back to Seaweed Brain, a Percy Jackson podcast, where for the last 3.5 years we have been reading every book Rick Riordan has ever written and seeking to answer the question, is Percabeth the greatest love story ever told? Now we are over halfway through season 1 of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and today we are going to be joined by a very special guest, an associate producer on the TV show. Stick around.
Woo! So before the episode, Eric and I were joking about NPR smooth voices, and she totally dropped into this like silky voice that is pretty similar to her speaking voice, but like effortlessly easy to listen to. I sound like a West Coast stoner, which I'm not, but
Wait, you actually do.
I sound so much like a West Coast stoner. You guys are gonna have to speed up my audio, like 2x speed. But yeah.
Or is it because you're from the West Coast, or have you just been on the West Coast for so long?
I'm from San Francisco, which is not like a SoCal surfer city at all. I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe just, too much ambrosia or something. But
too much nectar and ambrosia. Never too much nectar and ambrosia. Formal introduction. Stewart Strandberg is here in the house tonight. Will you tell us about your career and how you ended up working on the Percy Jackson show? Lay the foundation for us. You have my dream job. I want the listeners to know about what you do.
Yes. The foundation, first of all, my first interaction with John Steinberg, the showrunner of season 1 and co-creator and genius writer, was I texted him. He didn't have my number. And I texted him, Jeno needs you to be in the airport in an hour and a half. There's a car on the way to your house. By the way, this is Kristen's assistant, Stewart. And he was like, okay, cool. This is back, in 2018 when he was showrunning C, the TV show for Apple TV. I was working at Chernin, which was the studio. And he'd just been hired, and there was one of what would be many emergencies on set. And my boss is like, oh yeah, text John that he needs to be in Vancouver in the next 2 hours. I was like, great. And then with Dan, my first interaction in person with Dan this is before the pandemic, obviously, and before Zoom and all that. He lives, I don't know if anyone's familiar with LA geography, but he lives in Sherman Oaks, and our offices were in Marina Del Rey. So about, the north and south tip of LA. And I had a meeting, what I thought was a meeting, for him and some other people. It turned out to be a call. So I had him drive like 45 minutes one way against traffic. And I was like so scared to tell him it was a call. And he's like, oh, that's all right, man. We'll make it work. He was just so sweet about it. So yeah, that was my first interaction with them. And then my boss left Chernin, and ever since I started working in the entertainment industry, I've wanted to get closer and closer to where the story's built. I started at WME, which is a talent agency which represents a lot of writers, directors, actors, podcasters, you name it. Beyonce's, yes. multi-hyphenate one-namers. I worked there, got my job at Chernin, and through each step, agents, I was representing producers. So these producers would come to us with really fun show ideas, and we'd help them find financing, international sales, all that stuff. And then once we'd sold it, like that's off your desk. You're not focused on it anymore.
Yeah.
And that was really frustrating because it's like I get really excited about something, and then you and the client sell it, and you never hear from them again until their next thing. And so I wanted to get closer to the actual story. So I worked at Chernin, which is a production company studio. And what they do is they help develop these projects. Here's a writer with a certain idea. We know an actor or actress who could be really good for it. We're going to put them together. We have good relationships with networks. Networks are like the Netflixes, HBOs, Disney Pluses. We know what they're looking for, so we're going to bring it all together. And then obviously when they're shooting, they're ideally helping to supervise and do all that stuff. So I was at Chernin, and development's really fun. It's essentially being like what a book editor does. You're helping out with the project, but there are certain instances where you felt really strongly the direction should go one way, and the writers just, either for better or worse, would disagree, and there's nothing you can really do. So at that point, I was like, I want to get even closer to, the seeds of the story, where the story tree is born and not created by Zeus in some disastrous way. But I wanted to get as close as possible. So I heard John and Dan were looking. This is probably half a year after, like first, I pay in quotations, meeting them. And so I started as their assistant, showrunner's assistant, worked my way through The Old Man season 1. I was there when we were on set in The Old Man, which had a bunch of delays due to COVID and actors' health and stuff. I remember forever the Friday when 20th TV told us that Percy Jackson was going to them. We're just so happy. I should get those like text framed actually, but
Yeah.
we're all really happy. And since then, I mean, that was, almost 4 years ago. So since then, just risen to become writer's assistant, which is what I was for season 1 of Percy Jackson, and for season 2 of Old Man, the script coordinator, and hopefully, knock on wood or whatever you have, script coordinator for season 2 of Percy, which we're hoping to get greenlit. Fingers crossed.
Oh my goodness. Well,
Yeah.
now is the time I have to tell you that for our listeners, that for Carter, that I was a huge fan of C season 1 on Apple TV starring Jason Momoa.
It was crazy. Like there was one day where they had a grizzly bear on set, just like hanging out, and they had like a grizzly bear trainer, and like it's just like my colleague Zoe Neary was there. Just it's just a grizzly bear hanging out. And, like we can't bring food around it. And I was like, that sounds fun.
That is beautiful. Thank you for walking us through that, especially for our listeners who are interested in working in the industry. I'm sure this show is going to inspire a lot of people to work.
I hope so. That would be great.
Will you tell our listeners what being like a writer's assistant looks like?
Of course. I mean, you wake up at 3 a.m., work out, go to bed at 5, pre-workout, drink 2 raw eggs. And no, it's really nice. I think John said this about it. It's like being the archivist for the whole story. Your job is to take minutes, basically notes of every single writer's room. So for TV, because of deadlines, you have not one writer working on them, but, a whole group of writers and what we call a writer's room. And so you assign each individual writer an episode, and the writers collectively come up with an outline for the season, which obviously with a book that's already been written and is perfect. You don't need to do much to change that. So with the writer's room, you basically, it's like a basketball team. Everyone has their own skill. Everyone brings something different to the table. You assign someone an episode and they go out, crank it out while the room is still humming, because you're the engine of the whole story getting written. So as a writer's assistant, you're taking notes in every single writer's room and compiling documents for the writers who go off and write their episodes. These are all the relevant notes for that episode, blah, 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 blah. Really, again, just the archivist of the story. If something comes up in episode 207 that conflicts with something in episode 202, you have to bring it up. It's so funny to me with binging TV. It's like, you can easily, especially with episodes that are so short, like Percy, like you can watch it all in an afternoon. And, for us, that's like 2 years of our lives. Like the space between episode 203 and episode 207 was probably 9 months, like it's a lot of time passes between them. So you forget, certain small details that are obvious to someone who's experiencing it just by watching it.
Yeah. Okay, and you mentioned the books being perfect. Did you have any relationship with Percy Jackson before walking to this project?
Absolutely. I read them all when they came out.
For the listeners, he's wearing an orange Camp Half-Blood shirt now.
Yeah, exactly. Our costume department made them all. Obviously, they have a million of these, but they're all in kid sizes, which is really frustrating. So I had to find a size that's for an adult human. So fortunately, I was able to get my hands on one. But most of the Percy Jackson t-shirts, it would be a crop top, which I think defeats the message that I'm trying to send out to the world. I don't think I want to send the whole Camp Half-Blood drinking 20 beers on a Sunday.
That's a Dionysus vibe.
Yeah, exactly. No, so I read them when I was 12 years old. My first Facebook comment was in the Percy fan group. I hope no one finds it, because I was like, "Oh, you can be my Annabeth." You're, da da da. And the girl's like, "Don't ever message me again." Like, which I think is a pretty good Annabeth response, honestly. I think that's
She was your Annabeth. She was just your book one Annabeth.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, like a pre-book one, like even more work to do to get there. But I love the books, read them, and like always loved the project. I was scared when we got it because of the movies, obviously. Love Logan Lerman, obviously. Doesn't need to be said, but
period.
back to Logan. Logan, I know you're listening. We love you.
Oh yeah, Seaweed Brain listener Logan Lerman, big fan.
Oh yeah, but no, I've always loved the books. I absolutely love them. I was surprised when I reread them how relevant they still are. And my sister-in-law, Katie Klingman, she teaches high school English. So I was really surprised, not just that, like my generation, our generation, I don't know how old you guys are, 23 or something. You guys look very young.
24, 25.
Yeah, there you go. I grew up with the books, but my sister-in-law said, like the kids who come up still read them. And so it's just really heartwarming to me. And obviously, that there's people ages, 10 to 35 or whatever, I'm sure beyond, who still love them because they're so human and because Rick's voice is so funny and so smart. But so I had a lot of love for the books. I've read them, dozens of times each. I'm so excited for the later books too. My God.
What's your favorite book?
I love Labyrinth. I think 3 and 4 are my favorites.
3 is our favorite.
Yeah, 3 is amazing. I mean, I'm from the Bay Area. Rick actually used to teach at school. I think it was Claire Lilienthal. I could be wrong though, but it was a few miles from where my school was.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. I remember our librarian, I feel like I'm aging myself, but our librarian in school like brought us all together for like a reading of the book before it was published, because I think he gave it out to like a bunch of fellow teachers because he's a G.
Gosh.
And so I just remember like the first few chapters were read to us, and like right when Dodds was killed, like I was like, I'm in, like this is really cool. And I just loved it. I love that hook so much in that world. So yeah, I've been in it for a while.
I know Daphne mentioned, I'm pretty sure she told us a story and it was about you being like the youngest and like most like fan person who would be in the room and could be like, oh, this thing isn't right, or like this thing is right.
Daphne's a fan. Daphne became a fan. She's a big Luke stan. But no, at the early stages, I think I was kind of deep into protecting. I mean, not that it needed protecting, but like vouching for certain things that appeared small in the first few chapters that would grow bigger or anything like that.
Yeah.
In the lead up to this conversation, I think you mentioned that you specifically had a lot to say about episode 6. Can you say more about
Nico?
Talk about Nico and Bianca right now for 45 minutes.
We obviously had the Easter egg that the fans sleuthed in 10 seconds, but there were other versions of it. Eric and I were talking about it earlier, but one of the problems was if we cast Nico now, I mean, we shot that back in November of 2022. The actor who is ageless in the story would have aged. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the reasons we had to do it that way. But we had integrated him into the script a lot more before hitting that roadblock. I don't think I can go into how, but he would have been involved, is all I'll say, in a fun way.
Fully CGI'd, just like cast a robot and then CGI.
I love this episode because I really, in the books, gravitated towards the Lotus Casino. I just felt like, I mean, the reason we still talk about Greek mythology is because it's still relevant. And I think the Lotus Casino, reading it as a 12-year-old who would always procrastinate on homework and watch too much TV and couldn't get up from the couch sometimes, I thought that was just true, like capital T, true to my life. And the idea that, these people 2,000 years ago, before there was even a thing as like a comfortable bed, had that problem. It felt so fantastical to me, and it engaged my mind in such a way that a lot of books hadn't before. And I think that's the beauty of the books. Obviously, everyone, I'm sure, has that moment of realization that humans have been dealing with the same problem for aeons and aeons, and we changed so much, but we still at our core are very, very similar. And so just reading it, I felt very seen in a way that I hadn't before. And in bringing it to the small screen, I just wanted to make sure we still got that, and that moment resonated with kids in the same way it resonated with me, because obviously you have a bunch of people who are watching who never read the books, and I just wanted to make sure that they felt seen as well.
Yeah. This has been like, for whatever reason, whether it's because so many people felt attached to the Lotus Hotel and Casino in the books or because of the movies, this has been an episode like people were really looking forward to and really excited, and people have talked about a lot because everybody has their own like perception of what the casino is based on how they read it. And we felt very much after watching episode 6 like there was a strong characterization of the casino as being like a real casino, and that real casinos are weird and kind of sad places where you just get stuck. And like Hermes is like kind of weird and sad. Like, why is he spending his time here? Will you talk to us about that decision to make the casino a place that is unsettling and like not like glamorous?
Well, I think it's that emotional state where you are both enjoying being in a certain place, either in your life, literally like on the couch on a Sunday morning, having to get up and knowing you have a chore list that's taller than you are, or, just kind of at the verge of a tough decision, knowing you have to move, but being paralyzed to move. And it's this thing of, which I think is really relevant, you're getting so much short-term gratification or feedback, but you're not feeding your soul or the larger you in the long run. It's the short-term versus long-term gratification, and you can feed this part of yourself a bunch. But at the end of the day, that's not the full visceral you. So I think really the casino is about escapism. And the thing about escapism is you can never escape yourself. And Hermes knows that. I think he's here because he knows he's hurt. And I think if you look at the people who gravitate towards escapism, they're hurt people. And I think Hermes is there because he's hurt. He loves Luke. He obviously loves Luke's mom, and he hates how things shook up, what's going on. And he feels powerless, thanks to his conversation with Poseidon, to really act in the way that he suspects would be right or to make him feel better. With casinos, I think a lot of times it is exactly as Rick described it, just a break from reality. They don't have windows in casinos for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
I think that also part of it is an adaptation problem, because with a book, it's not in your face. It's kind of at the mercy of your imagination. In the book, I think that it was definitely more designed for kids, and there were kids there, but I don't necessarily think those kids are playing with smiles on their faces. I think it's more slack-jaw, 4 hours TikTok. I do wish that we had a shooting range off of Las Vegas. That would have been fun, or something like that from the books. But another issue with the adaptation is, with TV, it's the ugliest form of democracy. You've got a budget, you've got hundreds and hundreds of people who all have to really strive towards the same idea and articulating that idea. And so with this, we got this beautiful location. Well, not beautiful, it's an abandoned mall, but it's beautiful for us because of how we could dress it. And we really just wanted to stick with it and make it as good as we could possibly make it. And you can't really dip too deep into the VFX budget and create 20, 30, 40 layers to it like it was described as in the books. You have to be smart with your shots and everything like that.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of adaptation, in the larger conversation about pacing when it comes to these episodes and how to pace out an entire book in 8 episodes, we've been really interested about what gets shown versus what gets named, and like what gets kind of breezed through or what gets spent more time on. And like in this episode, it was so interesting to see all of the extras dressed in their varying period outfits that were so specific. And then like that's something that like doesn't get named. So it's almost like an Easter egg for the people who have read the book. Do you have anything to say about like the choices like that? Like what do you specifically spend time calling attention to when there's so little time because you have the constraints of the streaming episode length?
No, of course. That's a great question. I think that our goal from the beginning, something John really articulated well in all of our conversations, and something that Rick also felt strongly about, was we need to honor the fans, but also we want to make this a show for everyone, a la Pixar. What Pixar does really well with their movies, where you can be, a 40-year-old father or mother of 2 and enjoy it just as much as your child. And likewise with the books, we want the book readers to have a deeper understanding and enjoyment of it without ostracizing the people who are just coming into it with fresh eyes. there are things as a book reader that I really gravitated towards that some people who hadn't read the books the same way didn't want. But I think at the end of the day, we wanted to make something that everyone could enjoy, but book readers got to enjoy on a different level because they see the Easter eggs. And by the way, on the subject of costumes, we had a whole upstairs that Tish set up with just like costumes from every era, and it was just so fun. Like some family visited that week and they just got to like be like, I want to be a 1960s soprano or something, and like they would dress them up and do their hair. Like that was such a fun set. Just like the atmosphere was kind of very much Pretty Princess like play up. It was great.
Yeah, there were so many extras in this episode.
It's wild.
Everything that you've been saying about trying to keep some things new for people who have existing relationships with the books really comes to a head in this episode in particular. The last 2 minutes have so many things that book fans found surprising, interesting, new. There's the number of pearls. There's the fact that the solstice deadline has already elapsed. And in general, like the whole episode, like the inclusion of Hermes is the centerpiece of the episode and something that was added in. I guess I was wondering like how you all thought about the prospect of making this episode so different across these different dimensions, and like what the value is of trying to create fan surprise for adaptation.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Our goal was to include the Lotus Casino because it's just one of the most memorable parts of book one. But within the book, I don't think it took up that many pages. I think it was a pretty short stop. And at the same time, I don't think, other than setting them back, there was a material plot difference. It's something that materially changed the plot for them. So we really wanted to think about how can we expand, and I wish we were able to spend more time in it because I loved it. If I had my druthers, we'd have like 4 episodes in there, but especially connect the beginning of the episode outside of the casino where they're talking about family. They've kind of become their own little family unit, and Percy's on his way to meet his dad. We wanted to connect that to the end of the episode, Percy on his way to meet his dad. Lost friends, family, also big plot impact. Something had to change to get them where they are. So we thought with the family element, what better god to have there than Hermes? He is in hiding. He's not happy.
Can't get out of his sweatpants.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he probably has some stains on there. Some ketchup and barbecue stains. God. But we wanted to really have a family component throughout. And I think his scenes were so resonant, and as everyone here knows, sadly will be very resonant over the 5-season arc.
Yeah.
So he just felt really right for it. Another thing about adaptation is, I mean, our actors are so good. I don't know what you guys were doing when you were 12 years old. I can guarantee you I was not like crushing it
talking
in front
underwater
of 100 crew. And yeah, exactly. He did weeks and weeks of diving training, by the way, Walker, and he is such a stud.
Oh, we love that kid.
To be able to do it. He's the coolest. But it's really hard. It's easier in a book to convey that mental interior as opposed to like our actors are incredibly good, but I don't think an audience member who hadn't read the books would know what's going on if they're kind of drifting out of their quest more and more and more. So that is one of the reasons we had other characters drop in that we know of. As for the solstice deadline, I think we just wanted to add stakes to the back end of the book. Whereas, and you know, it'll be supported towards the end of the season in episode 8.
Yes.
So I don't want to say too much about it, but it's going to be more explained.
We really felt like where the end of this season differs from the end of The Lightning Thief, the end of this season sets up the end of season 5 better than the book sets up the end of book 5. Like all the choices that were made here to like make the war with Kronos seem like a bigger deal than necessarily the war between Poseidon and Zeus was really effective in like the overarching story. That obviously there's hindsight in being able to tell the story now that we know exactly what happens, where Rick didn't have that necessarily in 2005.
It's such a blessing. It's such a blessing having all the books written because we get to know, you know, we have the arcs for all the characters laid out. We know what motivations are. We can clarify motivations that might have been slightly delineated. Yeah. We can fix one character who is described as blue eyes in one book and green eyes in another book. Thank you, Rick. And it's so helpful. It's so helpful to have that and to be able to aim towards that.
Yeah.
Again, that'll be in episode 8. That'll be impactful.
Speaking of knowing things, Elizabeth in the show has been arguably more developed at this point in the story than it is in the book. Like at first when the show started, we were very like, let's like not dig too far into this ship. You know, we want to see how it gets played out in the season. Just because we know what happens doesn't necessarily mean like some monumental stuff is going to go down between these two characters in the season. And then episode 5 happened and it totally knocked our socks off, and it was beautiful, and the way that their relationship grew so much, and they both admitted things that they respect about each other, especially Annabeth. Wow. I don't know if you can say, but if you can, was the relationship between these two characters like particularly dove into more in the writer's room?
No, I hear you. I think I will tread lightly. We are honoring the overall arc of the books. We think that their ship is amazing. We love them and we don't want to move too quickly. But at the same time, after having gone through a quest like this and moments like that, it does feel like you would have a different level of trust and connection with someone.
Yes.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you can have romantic feelings at any age. They're both young. They're 12 in this book. And I think this is a connection without those.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think Annabeth has a crush on Luke like she did in the books, but I know she doesn't have a crush on Percy right now.
Yeah.
I think they have like a working buddy cop partnership.
Co-workers.
Yeah, exactly. Which we'll get more of obviously as the seasons go on. But right now, kind of enjoying sitting in it.
Yeah, I guess now is a fair time for me to say I really feel like, especially after rewatching episode 6, that I'm getting the vibe that Annabeth is like, you're a great coworker and I really admire you and look up to you, although I'm not going to say that to your face just yet. And Percy is like, wow, I'm fascinated. I am so fascinated by this girl. The way that Walker has the little twinkle in his eye.
And he crashes the car too, yeah.
Exactly. It's the car crash that made me feel like, okay. Part of me was like, I wanted to ask Stewart about this because like how much is in the script versus how much is Walker just like being a fan of these books and knowing so much like how Percy feels coming into his performance.
I mean, they're all fans of the books too. Walker's a huge fan. Leah is a giant fan as well. I mean, she was so stoked to just even audition and she loves the books. But no, I think that a lot of it is these kids also are just friends. I mean, like they're the only really young people on set and they just hang out. Like it's so wholesome. Like they just have like blasts. Like we're not going to school. We're just in Vancouver, like hanging out. Oh, and I will say on the Percivale subject, I mean, obviously not a spoiler, but season 2, there's no Grover to be the median between the two of them. So there's still a lot of room for that relationship to zig and zag.
Oh yeah, we think of Sea of Monsters as the Cooties book. Whereas in The Lightning Thief, they're like acquaintances to coworkers. But then as soon as they get to 13, there's like, oh God, Cooties, like the uncomfortableness.
Well, the Cersei, I think when they're at Cersei and that's when he first really sees her in that light.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait. Knock on wood.
Yeah.
Corey, you want to ask about, speaking of car crash, the parking lot scene?
Yeah, we have to ask about the parking lot scene. This was like probably the hardest we've laughed at anything.
I think Carter cried. It was so funny.
What was written for that? Like, what could even be on a page to describe the beats that
is it like
18
action lines, or does that come into the direction?
Oh no, it was all of it. I mean, Jed is awesome, and she is so good at getting performance and the humor, but a lot that was the script. I mean, every single action was in the script, and I really think it just comes down to the kids too. I mean, Grover and Percy, and I guess Annabeth too, have had no good experiences getting into cars. I mean, they have, aside from the bus in episode 1, but they get crashed by a Minotaur. They get the Furies to, scare them off a bus, and now this. So I really think the humor of that scene comes down to Walker, Ariane, and Leah just, looking like 12-year-olds, but acting like seasoned pros. Like they're just so good at so much.
Absolutely. Will you tell us about Levitating by Dua Lipa?
Oh, that was Zoe Neary.
Yeah.
Zoe
Okay, that's what I heard.
Yeah, that was Zoe. She went to a Dua Lipa concert too and had a blast.
And she was like, "This needs to go here now."
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
When I watch the movie, I think that's always when I turn it off, is when they get to the Lotus, because it's rough.
It's so icky. Yeah.
It's so funny that you say that, because I think that some people do have attachments to that scene based on the movie that are not necessarily that connected to the scene in the books, where specifically in the movie, it's like a frat party, basically.
It's so weird. They go line dancing at one point.
Yeah.
Like chorus girl line dancing. It is so like out of this world strange to me.
We were also relatedly curious as far as like backstage details go about like when in the like writing, revising, tweaking, drafting process did details about casting start to emerge into the picture, because this is an episode specifically where there are many reasons why the like casting of Hermes in particular like matters a lot, I think, for how like what jokes are going to be funny in this episode, like what it's going to like the weight it'll have in the like progression of the season. Like I don't even know if y'all are allowed to talk about that, but like
No, for sure.
Yeah,
for
when
sure.
was Lynn cast?
Yeah. When the studio told us we would get it, the first thing I did was like looked up celebrities who love Percy Jackson. Mostly this is like, can I like geek out with them? Like, is it all right if I geek out with these guys? And Lynn was one of the first names that popped up. He's a huge fan. We had that in the back of our mind. And Hermes, I think, is arguably the most complicated Olympian in the show. I love Mr. D so much, but his turn doesn't really happen until the fifth book.
Yeah,
but
later.
Hermes is such a complicated character, and he has to be hurt and really funny. And the performance Lynn gave was obviously good. It was out of this world.
Yeah.
And I think he captured so many layers with his performance. We just knew that it was the right choice for him. I think we actually wrote Hermes into the Lotus before we had Lynn. And then we were like, please. And he saved us. You're like, please, Lynn, come gamble with children. He was like, absolutely, yes.
Oh, God.
No, I mean, I think that's the really fun part about the show is not only can you have really fun actors come out to Vancouver for a few days, like The Edge or Susan Cryer for Echidna, who is probably funnier off camera than on. Like, she is one of one, amazing. Her interview with John and Dan was like the highlight of my first year on the show. It's so funny.
Oh my God.
But
Jason Mantzoukas.
Yeah, Mantzoukas is amazing. Perfect
Megan
Mr. D.
Mullally. Oh my God.
Oh my God. But yeah, his riffing also is just like out of this world. Like, it's like hard not to laugh while we're rolling. But also the gods change form very, canonically change form. So you can also have new fun people and represent all different kinds of people for different gods.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, we were talking about that a little bit when in episode 6, Percy's like, well, I don't know what Hermes looks like, so you guys need to go find him. We were like, oh, do we know if the gods change shape or change form? If Hermes is choosing to look like this, does Lin-Manuel Miranda exist in the Riordan verse? Is Hermes choosing to look like Lin-Manuel Miranda?
I think Hermes was choosing to look like that because he knew the kids were there. He wanted to help, but he couldn't say that he could help,
So he chose to look like Pulitzer Prize winner Lin-Manuel Miranda.
I think so, yes.
to keep them feeling welcome in the space.
That's not to say we're going to recast anyone of the people we had. We love everyone who came.
Yes.
But with Lance, unfortunately, passing away, it's, yeah.
He was so good in that last episode.
Yeah. Oh, you guys have seen all? I think I only got 4.
No, we've seen all of them.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Hook and crook.
So, yeah, we won't spoil anything for anyone, but Jesus Christ. Episode 7.
Oh, it's great.
Episode 8.
Yeah.
We were so happy with Luke in episode 8.
Oh, he's great. He's great. Yeah.
We're getting on the Princess Andromeda. Carter and I are joining that team.
Well, what do you guys want to see for season 2? I mean, obviously the party ponies.
We hear a lot, I think. Well, I mean, like our like branding is about Perciveth, and I think authentically those are the beats that we find the most interesting. So like Cersei, as you were saying, and like the Sirens Grove are probably the things that we have the most ongoing discussions about.
It's one of the best scenes of the series, the whole book series, is the Sirens. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited in particular. I know this is a big deal to Daphne, so it's not like this isn't going to get played up, but like this season was very much about family and the whole story is about family. But next season I feel like is so about the fatal flaws. And like as they're starting to grow up a little bit and like start to come into their identities and think about their identities as heroes, being like, what do we need to watch out for? Like, what are our pitfalls? How are we growing as people? And how do we identify those flaws in ourselves? And then how do Percy and Annabeth's fatal flaws complement each other so much?
Yeah, I really do think for season 2, I mean, they're in a really good place in episode 6, but I think for season 2, they probably won't be in as good a place because they don't have Grover as the medium. And instead of having someone to absorb all of that, they have someone who accelerates all of that, and Tyson.
Yeah.
Who Percy has to kind of protect, but also it's complicated. Who Annabeth has strong feelings about. So, I mean, we're just trying to figure out, it's still really early, but I think one of the big challenges for season 2 is just calibrating that. But it's gonna be so fun.
How much bickering is appropriate?
I love the bickering. It's just how angry is
No, the bickering is important.
Yeah.
And especially like Annabeth's storyline in season 2 for us was so like we really appreciated front loading some of it in season 1, where like we are getting these ideas that Annabeth is like ideologically evolving, and at the beginning that she's kind of like a traditionalist rigid. And small C conservative, someone who's like afraid of like new things and things that are in conflict with these like ideological orthodoxies that she has about the world and divinity and stuff. And especially since we went pretty far with that in season 1, we have to go further in season 2. Like we have to really let her exercise some demons about her own prejudices. And,
well, I also feel like even though she saw Percy in episode 5 and was like, I want to be like that, and like maybe my mom's ideology isn't the be all end all. The fact that she goes back home in between these two seasons,
was the big So the reason Annabeth is such a traditionalist is like we were thinking about this, and it's like obviously a lot of it's in the books, but you have to dive deeper. And like the only time she's really spent in the mortal world, the human world, was like in this bad, not bad, but like a family that's going through something really tough, kind of dysfunctional family, and she got chased. She ran away, and so she's been in the godly world for the last 6 years. I think she has 6 beads. I could be wrong. By the time we meet her. So she hasn't really experienced anything else. And this is her first foray into the world again. So a lot of it is, she's a by the book person, Percy street smarts, and it's kind of them balancing each other out in a good way. And the culmination of that is I'm going to have the bravery to go home and, see my family again.
Yeah. But then being there, I definitely triggering and definitely brings up thoughts that she has about the world and how the world works and how she has to protect herself. And then coming back into it in season 2, like where she is in her headspace definitely plays into like how awkward their relationship is between the two of them.
And
how willing she is to move and be changed.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm so
season 2 chills, guys.
God. I can't wait for the boats. Big pirate vibes from John Steinberg.
The adaptation thing is like knowing that the team behind the show, if they're going to do one thing, it's like the ocean.
It's an adventure on the seas.
Yeah, exactly. I will say though, and my thing, I think we can all agree Sea of Monsters is probably the least strong of the 5, which is a good thing for us because I think fans are going to be less precious about most of it. Obviously, we're going to keep the sirens. We're going to keep beloved things, but there's a lot more room to kind of, go deeper into like the stuff like family and stuff like that. But for me, it just doesn't make sense. It's like, why is Luke on a ship when Percy's, the son of the god of the sea? Like, why is the ship not sunk? Like it's neither here nor there.
Oh, the Bermuda Triangle, like rules are off. Territory.
Poseidon has no control there for sure.
Yeah. I haven't thought about that too. Like the Sea of Monsters really is just like little snippets of the Odyssey, and there's so much that happens in the Odyssey that you can pull from and like throw into.
It's Jason and the Argonauts too.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, there's a lot to be sprinkled in. And you're right. Like I think that the Lightning Thief, like no one is going to be as precious about anything as they are about the Lightning Thief. That's just the one that everyone's reread, and like because there's the movie and there's the musical, there's so many different iterations of it. There's definitely.
I would be remiss not to say Joe Trass is the funniest, smartest, most talented dude ever. He wrote The Lightning Thief, in case anyone's wondering where that caveat came from. The musical. And yeah, so he co-wrote this, and he is amazing. I love Joe. Hi, Joe.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say we want a musical episode at some point.
Oh, God. The Mean Girls Percy Jackson crossover. Yes.
Oh, my God.
Oh, wow.
Clarice George.
Oh, my God.
I don't
sing,
right?
Sing World Burn. Okay. The question that we have for you that we obviously have to end this episode on is, do you believe that Percybeth is the greatest love story ever told in all of its iterations and in all the ways that it exists here in 2024? And if not, or even if yes, do you have any comparable love stories that you would like to cite?
Obviously, Me and My Girlfriend is the greatest love story never told.
She's listening to this.
She is upstairs somewhere trying not to make any noise. Never told. But I think Percybeth hit me at a time in my life when I was just starting to talk to girls and get crushes and stuff like that. I don't remember being invested more in a love story, so I will say yes, the greatest love story ever told. Romeo and Juliet have something to learn from these guys. So, yes.
It's true.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Before we end up here, is there anything else you want to say? Like, this is your platform to speak to the fans. Do you want to say anything?
Fingers crossed for season 2, guys. Bring your swimwear.
Oh yeah.
Let's hope.
Pack your whites, pack your cruise wear. We're getting on that boat.
All aboard.
Yeah.
All aboard.
Choo choo. What do boat
Ahoy?
noises make? It's not a choo choo. Ahoy ahoy. Yeah.
Ahoy ahoy.
Ahoy,
I feel like it's like a steam boat. And
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Good bit, guys. Good bit.
And there will be no Confederate boats in this season.
Oh my God. I didn't want to ask. But
yeah, don't worry.
Thank you for saying. Okay, great. Okay, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you guys so much. Zoe's very excited for her episode. I tried to get her to come on mine, but she wants to prepare and everything.
Oh my God. Yeah, Daphne was like, you need to have them on together because they're like buddy cops, the two of them.
Yeah. Good cop, crazy cop. But yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. I've had a blast. And seriously, if you guys ever have any questions or want to Zoom about the actual writing entertainment industry, I'd be more than happy to be there.
Oh yeah, you'll get an email from me for sure.
There we go.
All right, thank you so much. Right. We will see you guys
see
next
you guys.
time.
Bye.
Bye.